joined by Florida A&M head coach Willie Simmons. The Rattlers fell to South Carolina State this past weekend in a non-conference contest and will face off against Bethune-Cookman this Saturday in Orlando live on ESPN Classic at 2 p.m. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Hey, good morning.
Coach, recap last weekend's contest versus South Carolina State.
Well, I tell you, obviously, like I said last week, I have a ton of respect for Coach Pough and what he's meant to this conference of all the years. And he gave the newcomer a good butt whipping and came down to Tallahassee and from the jump just kind of jumped on our guys. And we didn't come ready to play. We knew it would be a physical ball test, contest. And South Carolina State's always one of the most physical teams in the conference. And again, Coach Pough has really embedded an identity there of being a tough, hard-nosed football team. And they hit us in the mouth, and we didn't respond. And, again, you can attribute it to guys looking ahead to the Florida Classic or it's been a non-conference game or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, our guys have to understand that in this game, you have to come to play every week. And it's like Commissioner just said, if you don't, this league, the competition is too good. The players are too good. Coaches is too good for you to just show up and think you can beat people. And it's a valuable lesson for our football team. And I think as the season progressed, they began to, as they say, read the press clippings and think that maybe we were good enough to just show up. And so 2 weeks in a row, we've been proving that you can't do that. And so I think it was a good rude awakening for the guys. I think it came at a perfect time because obviously this week is the biggest game of the year. We say it every week, but it really holds true this week because it is the Florida Classic. It is against our in-state rival Bethune-Cookman and the conference championship and a chance to represent the conference in the Air Force Reserve Celebration Bowl is on the line. So we had to get back to work, lick our wounds, and I think the guys have responded in a positive way from what I've seen, and looking forward to a great game this weekend.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone. You will hear a 3-tone prompt to acknowledge your request. If your question has been answered and you would like to withdraw your registration, please press the 1 followed by the 3. 1 moment, please, for the first question. Our first question comes from the line of Melvin Beal with Inside Sports. Please proceed.
Good morning, Coach. How are you? Yes.
Hey, Melvin. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Coach, you talked about the lack of motivation for your team, but on the field, it seems that fundamentals suffered a little bit. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think they go hand in hand. When you don't have the mental focus to prepare for a game, it shows up on Saturday. And we have a belief here that we're a creature of habit, and we're a product of our habits. And we obviously exercised bad habits last week during practice with our lack of preparation, our lack of focus, and those bad habits showed up on Saturday. We had more false start penalties than we've had all year. We had more offside penalties than we've had all year. We dropped passes, we missed reads, we didn't tackle the dive when we were supposed to. I mean, just a lot of mental errors, a lot of uncharacteristic things, and I think it's a direct reflection of the approach we took to the game last week. And again, I think it's something for a young football team that we are to understand. And I think seeing it on paper 2 weeks in a row, or seeing it on film rather 2 weeks in a row, the message is starting to resonate that, again, we're not good enough. No, most of us aren't. We aren't good enough to just show up, go through the motions all week, and expect to perform the way we want to perform on Saturdays.
Well, Coach, obviously you said that this is the biggest game of the year, and it is. You know the history that's behind this game, and this is your first time getting an opportunity to coach. Talk a little bit about this matchup with Bethune-Cookman and how you guys match up on the field.
Well, again, the one thing about these type of games, we've all been in them in some capacity. A rivalry game is just that. Two teams who have a kinship to one another, two teams who have general disdain for one another on the field of competition because, we are the only two HBCUs at this level in the state of Florida. We are competing for the same student athletes, the same students, the same recognition throughout this state. So it's a long-standing rivalry, one of the longest, I think, in the country. And it's been a lot of great ball games, a lot of historic coaches and players and just moments in this game. And I expect this weekend to be no different. They have a great coach there, and Coach Terry Simmons, and what they've been able to do there. Obviously, they've had the upper hand in this series the last 7 years, winning 7 years in a row. And so obviously our guys understand the importance of it. They're trying to, one, break that streak, but two, again, with everything that's on the line. So I expect them to be a team that's going to play hard. They're athletic. They're fast. They have one of the most dynamic players in the league, and Jimmy Robinson. Their quarterback is starting to hit his stride, and they just came off a huge win last week versus North Carolina Central. So they'll be a confident bunch. Our last two games we've gotten beat. So, again, I think the confidence level will be on their side. We just have to get back to doing the things that we're capable of doing as far as paying attention to detail, the way we prepare throughout the week, and giving ourselves a chance to be successful on Saturday.
Our next question comes from the line of Andreas Butler with Florida Courier. Please proceed.
Hey, Coach, good morning. How you doing? When you look at this Bethune-Cookman University football team, what stands out on the film when you're looking at this team?
They're fast. They're athletic. They're a Florida team, just like we are. So everyone knows when you typically see teams from the state of Florida, they're going to be fast, and that's what they are. Again, Jimmy Robinson's a blur. They have running backs that can run, receivers that can run, defensive backs that can run, linebackers that can run. So it's going to be a lot of speed on the field on Saturday. And again, they do a lot of things to try to get their playmakers the ball, and so they do a really good job of that. Defensively, they put their guys in position to make plays, use their athleticism, and they're very dangerous in the return game. And so it's definitely going to come down to who can execute and neutralize the star power that's on the field. Both teams have very dynamic players on both sides of the ball, and it's going to be which team can neutralize those star players to give themselves the best chance to be successful.
There are no further questions at this time.
Well, Coach Simmons, thank you for joining us this morning, and good luck as you head to Orlando on Saturday to face off against Bethune-Cookman.
All right, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. See you next week.
Same. Florida A&M will face off against the Wildcats of Bethune-Cookman this Saturday at 2 p.m. in Orlando, Florida, in the annual Florida Blue Florida Classic. The contest will be shown live on ESPN Classic and also can be streamed on ESPN3. We'll now talk to the other half of the Florida Classic in Terry Simmons of Bethune-Cookman University. The Wildcats, as I alluded to, will face off against the Rattlers at 2 p.m. on Saturday live on ESPN Classic. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning, Ryan. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Last week, the Central contest once again came down to the wire. So just talk about your team's perseverance last week in battling back to earn a hard-fought win.
Well, first of all, you have to give credit to Central, Coach Eastman and his staff. They had those guys prepared. They came in and they punched us in the mouth early. I don't think we came out and played particularly well the first half, more so the first quarter. We just didn't play very well. And, they took advantage of a couple of things that we were not really detailed in, and it turned out well for them. So you have to take your head off to those guys. They came in and they had a plan. But, I will say this for our group, they're resilient. They knew that we had to win this game to stay in this race. So, our leaders just stepped up, and we got it together and pulled together in the second half and put a few drives together to put ourselves in position to win.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone keypad. First question comes from the line of Rory Sharrock with Tallahassee Democrat. Please proceed.
morning, Coach. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
Fine, thank you. My first question for you, the 7-year streak that Bethune has over FAMU, is that something that it's a great run that you guys have had recently? Is it something that is kind of stressed and preached or that looms over the campus, or do you put that out of sight, out of mind, and just really focus in on 2018?
No, I think, if you start thinking about stuff like that, you take your focus off of what it needs to be, and that's the game at hand. I think before we started this streak, they had a long winning streak. So, I don't think you really put that into it. When you're talking about these rivalry games, you can't look at wins, losses, throw the records out. You can't look at streaks. I think, the first year that I was in this conference, we were 10-0 going into the Classic, and they knocked us off. So, I don't think you can look at anything in the past when you talk about these type of games. We understand that they have a lot of great athletes, and they have a great coaching staff, and their record proves that. They've been put in position to be successful every week. They've had a couple games, lately where the ball just didn't bounce their way, but you can't make a determination on what type of football team they are by doing that, by just looking at these last 2 games. You have to look at the games before that, and Coach Simmons is doing a great job. He has some new players he brought in, but he has some of the same guys there. He's just, brought a new energy to that program. So we definitely have to be prepared to step in and play a A1 football game on Saturday.
And, Coach, my last question for you, from a historical and a cultural standpoint, just speak about what the Florida Classic means for you and the university.
Well, it's a classic that has been, around for a long time. It's been in Tampa, it's been Orlando, a lot of rich history, and I think Coach Simmons, he alluded to it earlier. It's bragging rights, but it's also, the upper hand in recruiting, not just student athletes, but regular students in this conference. In this state, we're fighting for a lot of the same kids, and to be able to say that you won the Florida Classic that year, it'll make a big difference, in this state. So the history is phenomenal. It's outstanding, and just the tradition of the Florida Classic itself, and the sponsors and everyone who has a hand in putting this thing together and giving our student athletes a stage like this to put their talents out there and give the world something to see, to show that HBCU football can be great.
Our next question comes from the line of Melvin Beal with Inside Sports. Please proceed.
Good morning, Coach. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
I'm well. Coach, talk a little bit about the distractions of this game. There are a lot of different things that can happen during this week, a lot of events planned, and a lot of things that can impact players. Talk a little bit about how do you get your team ready to deal with these distractions and stay focused on the game.
Well, I think, first and foremost, that's the coach's job, myself and my staff, to keep our guys focused on the task at hand, and that's the football game. I think you have to treat this game similar to how you treat a homecoming game. We're not here to be involved in all the festivities and the events. We're part of the entertainment. And that's just the way that I speak to my guys about it. We're not here to be involved in all of the activities. That's not for us. We have to get prepared to play a football game, and that's just what we're doing. So I think if you just focus on what you have to focus on and not really acknowledge everything else that's going on, our daily schedule and on Friday the things that we have to do, it'll keep us away from all that.
Talk a little bit about the specific challenges that Florida A&M brings to the table on offense. They seem to be very balanced, both running and passing the ball.
Well, I mean, you can go back to, following Coach Simmons all the way from Alcorn and Prairie View. He's always had great offense. And, they do a great job of being balanced. He has a quarterback that's a game manager. Ryan is a great talent, and his talent shows week in and week out. He's a tough, gritty young man. He understands the game of football. He does just what they're asking him to do on Saturdays when he takes the field. It's just manage the game. He's doing a great job of that. They have a very, very talented core receivers, guys that go up and attack the football. And they do a great job of making things happen once they catch the ball. So I definitely think we have to look at that. And, I've seen 3 running backs so far, and they have a guy that plays a little receiver and a little running back, both that they're giving the ball to. So they have a lot of explosive players, a lot of guys that do great things with the ball. We just have to know who's on the field and where they are and put a plan together to stop them.
Our next question comes from the line of Andreas Butler with the Florida Courier. Please proceed.
Hey, Coach Sims, how you doing? It's me again. You talked about FAMU's offense. What do you see on them from defense and special teams?
Well, defensively, I think their defensive staff, their defensive coordinator, he has changed the whole mindset of those young men. And you see them attacking on every play. They look to go and make plays. Being a defensive guy myself, you love to see great defensive football. And watching these guys on film, they're where they're supposed to be. They're attacking the ball. They're swarming to the ball. So, they pose a lot of problems. They're an aggressive bunch. And, you got to make sure, one, that you're securing the football and make sure that we're doing the things that we're coached to do to try and be successful against them. Special teams, they're solid. They're not making a whole lot of mistakes. And if you have a special teams unit that's not hurting you, I think you got a hand up in the game. So I think, you look at a great aggressive defense, and then you look at a solid special teams unit. They do things that give them an opportunity to be successful week in and week out.
There are no further questions at this time.
Coach Simmons, thanks again for joining us this morning. We'll talk this time next week for the final time. So definitely look forward to watching you on TV this weekend as you prepare for Florida A&M.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bethune-Cookman will face off against Florida A&M in the annual Florida Blue Florida Classic this Saturday at 2 p.m. The contest will be shown live on ESPN Classic and also can be streamed on ESPN3. We're now joined by Delaware State head coach Rod Milstead. The Hornets fell to Morgan State this past weekend and will face off against Virginia University of Lynchburg this Saturday in its season finale. Coach, good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Ryan. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Coach, last week's game, hard fought. Remind me of one of those old NFL games in terms of good offense in terms of running the ball and smash mouth defense. You talk about the contest versus Morgan State.
Well, Ryan, Morgan State came out and they played well. They needed to win at home, and they played well enough to get it. I think we came in a little overconfident. We were riding high from beating Central and then beating Savannah. And we came in and didn't do the things that were necessary to win the ball game. So disappointed on that end, but we know we got to go past that and finish this thing off strong. So we look forward to playing this weekend against University of Virginia Lynchburg.
Well, thank you, Coach. We'll open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone keypad. We have a question from the line of Lute Williams with Black College Sports Page. Please proceed.
No, I had actually tried to get in a question with Coach Sims. I think there was a holdover from that.
There are no further questions at this time.
Well, Coach, just talk about, obviously everyone knows your success is predicated on the run. Just talk about once Morgan State kind of stopped it, the adjustments you had to make to try to get back into the game, because you had some opportunities early on and even late down the stretch as you were in Morgan State's red zone.
Well, the things that have been hindering us all year long is the mental mistakes. We had a touchdown call back, which really hurt. We had some blown coverages on our defense that gave them a shot, and they're inside the 5, and we got pressure all over their quarterback. He throws it up, and next thing you know, they get a 40-some yard reception because we have a blown cover. So another play when they scored on, we sent in a blitz, and one guy's out of position. That's the lane they ran through, and then they get the long touchdown. So that was the only touchdown of the game. Like I said, it was a hard-fought battle. I think we came in like overconfident, riding high, and that's something that we're going to have to learn from. Our team is not made where we can come in and confident. We got to continue to work and build that confidence as we go by doing the right things along the way. And so disappointed, but like I said, we're going forward. My hat's off to Morgan. They won the football game. They were able to run the ball effectively against us, and we had problems. They stretched their defense out, which is a different look than we've seen, and we never adjusted from it. So after watching the film now, you can go back and make the adjustments, but we got to do a better job, even as coaches, to make sure that we see those things and make the adjustments during the game time. So I take the hit for this as the head coach. I don't put it on our kids. That was something that we should have seen, and going forward, we'll do a better job at it.
And before we close out, Coach, this week's opponent in Lynchburg is not the same Lynchburg people have become accustomed to. They've been in some contests this year, so just talk about what you've been able to see from Lynchburg on film.
Man, they're very unpredictable. That's one thing. They you don't look at their record, man. Don't look at the things that you've seen. We got to prepare for this game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're going to come in here and play and do everything they need to do to try to get a win out against a Division I opponent. So we're not taking it for granted, that's for sure. Matter of fact, this will probably be one of the hardest weeks of practice to prepare for, because there's so many different facets of their football game. Defensively, they fly around. They move people. They move their fronts. They attack the football. And then offensively, they play with 3 different quarterbacks, and all 3 of them bring a different dynamic. And if you give them a chance to sit back in that pocket, they got receivers on the outside that can embarrass you. So they got a real good running game. So we got some things that we got to prepare for, and we're definitely not going to take them lightly. This is our senior day, our seniors' last opportunity to play with a Hornet uniform. So it's a big deal for us as a program going forward, and we really need to come out and play Delaware State football the same way we did the previous weeks when we got victories at home.
Well, Coach, thank you. And watching that game on ESPN last night, looked like you could have gave them some snaps, but that's another scenario. But
exactly, that's another scenario.
But definitely want to touch base with you and enjoy the conversation. We'll wrap it up next week after your contest versus Lynchburg.
Sounds good, Ryan. Have a great week.
You too. Delaware State will face off against Virginia and Lynchburg this weekend in Dover at 1 p.m. The contest will be shown live on ESPN3. We're now joined by Howard University head coach Mike London. The Bison fell to Norfolk State this past weekend and will host Bryant University at home this weekend live on ESPN3. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you doing? Doing great.
Good, Coach. recap last weekend's game in Norfolk and what stood out once you got back and thoroughly reviewed the film.
Yeah, Latrell Scott's team did a great job coming out and playing us well in all facets. We jumped out on them early and weren't able to sustain, drives as the game went on. We couldn't stop them, defensively. They were able to convert some third and long situations that really kept the ball and the clock moving for them. And it just, it's a disappointing loss. And we played them last year here up at Green Stadium, and literally that came down to the last play of the game. But they did a good job, and they did what they had to do in order to to limit our offense, and then they were able to control the clock and move the ball and take time off the clock, and we weren't able to get them off make them punt the ball or get them off stride. So it's disappointing. It's one of those things that another win there would have been a conference win, but we didn't win. So we ended up the season with a 4-3 conference record, which is one of the things we take solace in is there's a lot of expectations for us this year. The last couple of years in terms of the conference wins at the program, we've done a great job with that. But when you're building a program and a culture of winning, then obviously it hurts to lose any game like that. But we have one final game left. That's here against Bryant. They're a school out of the Northeast up in Rhode Island. They're 5-5. We have an opportunity. It's our last game. We're not going to. The game against Savannah State's not going to be continued. But it's an opportunity for our guys, our seniors, to go out, on a winning ledger. And this week worth of practice and all those other things are something that our guys are keenly aware of, that this is it for some of them, for a lot of them. So we're going to do the best we can to make sure we end on a positive note with the program and send our seniors out.
Thank you, Coach. We'll open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone. Our first question comes from the line of Lute Williams with Black College Sports Page. Please proceed.
Coach London, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What has been the condition of Jaquez over the last 3 games? I know he's caught a touchdown pass in a couple of them, but hadn't really had the kind of output. Is that because he is a little he's battling some injuries, or is it just because teams have adjusted themselves to kind of shut him down in terms of being able to shut down your offense?
Well, it's a lot of it is the fact that he's been battling a hamstring injury for a while. When you're a guy that you're a vertical speed guy, can stretch the field because you can run. That hurts when that guy's not 100% full speed. And at this point of the season, a lot of the teams are limping into their last few games. Jaquez is a guy that's a dynamic playmaker for us, and he guts it up and he gets out there and he tries to do what he can. As I said, a guy that's a vertical speed guy, when you got hamstring issues, it does limit you. And as I said, the injury bug, catches everybody. It got us. We started 3 freshman offensive linemen, this past Saturday. But a lot of teams are out there starting guys, second-team guys or backups because of where you are in the season. But as I said, and it's a great question. Jaquez is a guy that can get it done, and he's skillful, very talented, but limited nonetheless because he's not been able to run and open up.
And obviously taking him away, or not having him at 100% is really kind of stifled your offense.
What it does, you take a guy away like that, and teams will play with a safety down and 8 in the box, and then have a guy, extra defender there for your run game. So everyone has the tools and or the guys that are the go-to guys that change the course of how defenses maybe call the game, or if they double your receiver, then all of a sudden you have an opportunity to run the ball. But the last few weeks here, he's been bothered by that. He's trying to be a gutsy kid, but at the same time, you just when you're limited like that, you got to find other ways. We didn't find enough ways to put enough points on the board for us to come out with a victory. But hopefully as we end up the season here, we can put a representative a game together that's going to allow our seniors to go out on a positive note.
There are no further questions at this time.
And, Coach, before we close out, let's talk about this week's opponent in Bryant, as a lot of folks may not have heard from, especially further south, as their Northeast Conference opponent in Rhode Island.
Yeah, they are way northeast. They're up there in Rhode Island, and I believe they're 5-5. Right now. They're a team that has good players. They've had some fortune, and they've had some disappointment as well. They're coming into to Green Stadium, as I said, our last home game, and we're looking forward to a competitive match, but we want to play well and our seniors. We'll have a few seniors this year, but in their careers here, at least the 2 years that we've been here, with back-to-back conference wins, winning record conference-wise, and then just send them out on a positive note. So look forward to the challenge, and our guys will be ready to play as Bryant comes to town.
And before, I wanted to ask you, you have every week is more names popping up making contributions. Just talk about trying to get them up to speed throughout the year, especially at the latter part of the year when you kind of sometimes want to go with guys you've been playing with, but sometimes situations just don't dictate that.
Yeah, with the new NCAA rule that allows you to play up to 4 games, that's I'm quite sure other teams have used that to an advantage, where you might have we had to do that. Like I said, we started 3 freshmen at the offensive line position, and a couple guys, offensive linemen that may not be mature enough in terms of the physicality of it, but have skill sets. Well, they get in there and they play, and you take your lumps with it, but at the same time, that with the dedicated amount of weight training and nutrition and things like that, they're going to be good players. So the guys like Dietrich Parsons and of the world that have done good jobs for us. There's other young players that came in and have played this year for us that you talk about birth date and weight room, getting a little older and lifting. So there's a lot of good young players here. We talked about it preseason, like 60-something players are freshmen, redshirt freshmen, or true sophomores that played. And so the ability now to finish up on a positive note and do some things, to gain their development is going to be critical, for the success moving forward. But nonetheless, the recruiting classes and all those things like that is something that's been very positive. So we're looking forward to moving forward.
Well, thank you, Coach, and we'll close out next week for the final time, and good luck as you take on Bryant this weekend at home.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Howard University will take on Bryant University this Saturday at 1 p.m. at Green Stadium in Washington, D.C. You can watch the game live on ESPN3. We're now joined by Norfolk State University head coach Latrell Scott. The Spartans defeated Howard University at home last weekend and will remain at home to host Morgan State on Saturday. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning, Ryan. Doing fine. How about yourself?
Hey, I'm good, Coach. Just the weather is cold and hot. You know how it is. Coach, just talk about last week's game. You defeated Howard. You battled back to claim the big home win. Just talk about your team's will to come back and pull out that game in the second half?
Well, you have to credit our kids. They're a tough, resilient bunch. They don't listen to the outside noise. They just come to work and practice every day. And fortunately, we all showed up together and played as complete of a game as we've played in about a month. And we were able to beat a good Howard football team. It's just good for our kids to get a win.
And I wanted to ask a question about quarterback Juwan Carter, Offensive Player of the Week. He pretty much had a great game, and it translated to a win. Do you think his play this season has kind of been the pressure of him putting the pressure on himself to make sure everything is handled on the offensive end, or can you just kind of talk about, just his play and when he's on, what you think attributes to that?
Well, he struggled for the last month. A lot of people have had a lot of different things to say about him, and he's tuned that out. And we decided as a staff to stick with him because I believe in him, our staff believes in him, his teammates believe in him, and I think the biggest thing that he did, he just came out and played the game. He didn't try to win the game. He made all the throws that we needed him to make, and made all the checks that we needed him to make, and the one turnover that he had really wasn't his fault. So if he can come out and just relax and play football, and not try to be a guy that goes out and wins the game for you, I think that's where he's better suited. I mean, he's still 19 years old. He's still a true sophomore in college, so a lot of the things that come with being a young guy in college, leading the football team, it's probably been his issue.
Thank you, Coach. When I open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone. We have a question from the line of Luke Williams with Black College Sports Page. Please proceed.
Hey, Coach Scott. Good morning.
Good morning, Luke. How are you?
Not bad. Just 1 week you said the A&T game you hoped was a get-right game. Turns out it came 2 weeks later, huh?
Yeah, well, we talked to the kids about playing with the same effort and intensity and, level of performance that we did at A&T, but trying to do it for 4 quarters, and they did it, so it's, it took a week longer than we thought it would, and, again, with this depletion of our kids for continuing to fight and, overcoming some circumstances to beat a pretty good Howard football team.
What was the difference, you think, in terms of, did you just play better overall? Was it better offensive execution? Was your wine just better than he's been? You said he's been struggling for the last month. What turned?
I think, defensively, we stopped the run. We had some trouble stopping the run the last few weeks, but I think that's somewhat attributed to the offense, and the turnovers that the offense had. Juwan had thrown 10 interceptions in the last 4 games, and only threw 6 all last season, but we just kind of tried to settle him down and continue to simplify what he was doing, and didn't ask him to do too much, but also made sure that he wasn't trying to do too much outside of the scope. He took it very personally, when he was struggling, and there were a lot of people that had a lot of things to say. I told somebody yesterday, believe me, I got more suggestions about what to do with our offense and our quarterback situation during that time period, that I've ever gotten advice. But that's the nature of the business, and our kids understand that, and we stuck with him for a reason because we feel like he's the best quarterback on our team, and he came out and played like a kid who's capable of being one of the best quarterbacks in the conference.
There are no further questions at this time.
Coach, talk about your place kicker, Josh Nardone. He's had a pretty good season, and you're talking about his development and the type of player is he off the field.
Well, Josh is another local guy. He's a true sophomore, so he had some growing pains, but he's improved on a weekly basis. He's a kid that we trust. He's done a tremendous job with our PAT field goal situation, and he's done a really, really good job with our kickoff situation. But, he's just a normal guy, happy-go-lucky guy. He has a great time with his teammates. His parents and his family are very involved in our program, and that's what you get, when you can recruit local guys. But he's been a a mentor, a guy to look up to for some of the younger kickers, and he and the punters and snappers and all those guys have a great group, and they've been able to establish some continuity because they spend a ton of time together on and off the field.
And talk about this week's opponent in Morgan State, as Morgan State pretty much is as advertised. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to be tough against the run. So they'll talk about going up against the Bears this weekend.
Well, Coach Wilson, for what he's doing, on defense, he's going to line up and play cover zero and make you beat them throwing the football. Offensively, they don't do a ton. They're simple, but they're physical. Morgan State by nature is a tough football team. I've been involved in games, with Morgan in November for it seems like my whole life, as a player and as a coach. And it's one of the toughest teams, physically, to compete against because they're a prideful bunch of kids. They're tough, and Ernest has done a tremendous job under tough circumstances up there. And I think those kids are really, really playing hard for him, and we didn't expect them to come in here and lay down by any stretch. So we've told our guys that we better be able to match intensity and understand what we're getting ourselves into on Saturday.
And also, you had a newcomer. He made a big contribution in Marquise Hall, a name a lot of people might never have heard of until last week. Just talk about who he is and the type of player he's on the field.
Well, we made a change at our inside linebacker position. Marquise has played snaps at outside linebacker and on special teams all season, just not the extended time that he's played. He jumps in there and has double-digit tackles and, makes a ton of plays for us. He's a big physical kid. He's about 6'3", 220. He sat out last season, kind of getting himself ready to go, and he's been a tremendous asset to us all season long, and, we're glad to see how he responded once he got the starting nine.
And just talk about this being your home finale, and this week, and your seniors going out. Just talk about your senior class from in your experiences. Since, if I'm not mistaken, this team or this group would have came in when you came in.
Well, we put this class together in about a month. I really didn't take over here until after Christmas. I was hired late in December, and school was pretty much closed, and there was recruiting dead period. But this group of guys is very special to me, because these are the group of guys that decided to come here with us. And you look at Marcus Taylor, Quintrell Chung, and Aaron Chandler, guys, Sean Middleton, guys that have been contributors to us, the entire time they've been here. The sad thing is that this is my last week with them. The good thing is that it's only 9 seniors that are leaving. We still have a ton of guys returning on next year's football team. But if you look at what Marcus Taylor has done in the Meac, Quintrell Chung's been a leader on our team. From day one, has played as true freshmen, and these kids have changed the focus and thought process of the Norfolk State program. Our record may not show it all the time, but this program is better than it was when they got here, and it's because of guys like that, and they've been able to recruit some of the younger guys that are here that are in the process of getting this thing turned around. So we're very appreciative of our seniors, and hopeful that people show up to say goodbye to them on Saturday.
Well, Coach, appreciate it, and also good luck to those seniors from the Meac, and good luck as you prepare to face off against Morgan State in your home finale.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Take care.
You're welcome, and you too. Morgan State will travel to Norfolk State this weekend, as the Spartans will host the Bears at 1 p.m. The contest will be streamed live on ESPN3. We're now joined by Savannah State University head coach Erik Raeburn. Savannah State fell to North Carolina A&T State this past weekend and will head to South Carolina State on Saturday. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning.
Let's talk about last week's game versus North Carolina A&T State, as he had some opportunities throughout the contest, and he remained close pretty much throughout the game.
Yeah, we fell behind early on, I think 21-0, but we got back within a touchdown, and
and then gave up a big kickoff return, and I think they scored a touchdown 2 plays later. But really offensively and special teams wise, they got the best of us, and it really put us in a hole. Really put our defenses with their back against the wall. I thought we played pretty well on defense. We were a little disappointed in our run defense, but overall, I thought we got a good effort out of those guys. Facing a pretty explosive offense in A&T.
Now I know coaches don't like moral victories, but do you take anything from last weekend as you held A&T to 53 yards passing?
Yeah, it's obviously we don't want to start celebrating moral victories. We want to try to find a way to get actual victories, but I think you have to point out the bright spots, the things that you are doing well, and we have played we played well against the pass all year. Certainly in the conference, we felt like this was going to be a really difficult test for us in our pass defense, but our guys did well in the perimeter. Particularly John Wilson and Naeem Bozeman, Isaiah Bennett and Donald Rutledge. The 4 guys kind of in the back end of our defense. I thought they did a good job against some really talented guys out in the perimeter.
Thank you, Coach. We're going to open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone.
Coach, talk about this weekend's opponent, South Carolina State, as pretty much they're a young team. They hit their stride past few weeks, and the results are showing. So just talk about going up against the Bulldogs this weekend.
Yeah, obviously it's going to be a tough test for us. They're playing really good. They've gotten better and better every week. I think they've won 4 out of their last 5. And are on a roll. Beat some good football teams on the road, and obviously, they kind of everything's kind of centered around their quarterback. He's a dynamic player. I think he's 3rd in the conference in rushing yards, and then when you throw his passing yards on there, he's one of the leaders in the conference in all-purpose yards. So he's a really dangerous guy, and obviously we didn't play great run defense last week, so he's a big concern for us. And then defensively, I've been really impressed with them. They have done a great job of taking the ball away. I think they lead the conference in turnover margin and in interceptions. In a tough game against UCF, who's undefeated at the FBS level and has an excellent quarterback. I think they picked him off 4 times in the game. So they got some talented guys on defense, and they play hard. They're well coached, and so it'll be a difficult test for us on the road for sure.
And looking at your team at this point of the season, what area have you think they've grown in the most, and what area do you think that still needs improvement?
Well, I think the area I think we've grown the most on is on the defensive side of the ball. We got a new D coordinator. We weren't able to have spring football, and so I think it's taken a little while for our guys to learn the new system. But you can see they're starting to feel more and more comfortable. They understand the calls more thoroughly, and they're we're playing pretty hard on that side of the ball. I guess the area that has plagued us a little bit. One would be special teams.
we thought we were going to be much better from a special team standpoint than what we performed this year. We've been very good on punt return. There's been areas that were good on special teams, but the other areas, we have been really poor in. And then from an offensive standpoint, we just haven't been explosive enough in the passing game. We're inconsistent, and it's really kind of all three phases. We're not throwing the ball accurately enough, consistently enough at quarterback. We've got a lot of drop balls. We're busting routes, those type of things in the perimeter. And then we've given up more sacks than anyone else in the conference. So our protection's been poor. Some of our decisions at quarterback have been poor, and we're not getting a lot of separation at receiver. So that's a recipe for inconsistency in the passing game, and that's kind of been our Achilles heel a little bit offensively.
Well, Coach, didn't know about the spring practice, but could you kind of reflect? This is your third year at Savannah, and when you came in, what was your timetable? And are you exceeding that timetable, or are you right where you thought you was at when you go back and kind of reflect on your first day at Savannah?
Yeah, I guess obviously I knew we had a lot of work to do, and we were at the bottom of the conference by a pretty significant margin. But I guess I don't know. I don't know. I'm not one of those coaches that can do like a 5-year plan. I mean, I every week I think there's a way we can win, and if we have a good plan and we execute it properly, and so it's been I think we're better, but not winning. Just playing everybody tough. That's still frustrating for me, I know, and I think for our team too. So it's been kind of a frustrating year in terms of we feel like there's been some missed opportunities. That if we would have done a better job coaching, if we'd have done a better job of executing the game plan as players, we could have won a few more games.
Well, Coach, we appreciate you for taking time out, and we'll wrap it up next week at the same time. And good luck as you head up to Orangeburg this weekend.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Savannah State takes on the Bulldogs of South Carolina State this Saturday. Kickoff is set for 1:30 p.m. and will be shown live on ESPN3. And speaking of South Carolina State, we're joined by head coach Buddy Pough of the Bulldogs. Bulldogs defeated Florida A&M last weekend in a non-conference contest and will return home to host Savannah State this weekend. Coach, good morning, and how you doing?
Hey, Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. Well, Coach, two things. The first one, talk about the team's play last weekend, as it appears you didn't have any rust from the bye weekend. And I'll follow up with my second thought as soon as you answer that one.
Okay. We played down at FAMU this past Saturday evening and Saturday afternoon, and were able to win the football game. It was one of the better games for our team. We do seem to continue to get a little bit better each week, and I don't sometimes know the team that I'm looking at, as I look out there and see us play, because we look nothing like, what we looked like early in the year. So, as these young guys are continuing to get more confidence and figure out how to, do some things, we seem to be reaping some of the benefits by our team coming together. We've played decently on defense pretty much the whole year, although we kind of broken up there now with some injuries and that kind of stuff. And of course, special teams wise, we seem to be, finding some guys there who have some interest, in participating. And then last but not least, our offense is coming around. So it's fun to watch them play right now, and hopefully we can continue to develop, this team to the point where, we can get these guys on to the next level.
And speaking of fun to watch them play, watched the game last week, and you could just tell, you could, in their play, the confidence level, and watching at the end of the game, even you got kind of emotional, Coach. Just talk about just watching this team grow, especially from this point compared to where they were 12 weeks ago.
Well, Ryan, it's really gratifying to see young men develop and grow, the way these guys have grown over the season. We were not a third of what we are now at the beginning of the year, and you didn't know where to put people, and you didn't know whether people could actually play the game or not at this level. So as you see them where they are now, it is a situation where you're really appreciative of the fact that you have these kinds of opportunities, and it's getting toward the end of the year, so things are coming to an end.
And talk about is one thing. A lot of people, I guess, it kind of went under the radar. You had some changes in the coaching staff, and it was several coaches came in. So talk about just the transition, getting all of them, just to understand them from a head coach, assistant coach standpoint, then translating it over to the players.
You're exactly right. We've got almost a totally different offensive staff in place. Bennett Swaggart, who was the offensive coordinator last year at Newberry College here in South Carolina, is now our offensive coordinator. He coaches our quarterbacks, and he calls our offense for us. And he brought with him Deshaun Goddard, who's our new offensive line coach. And both those guys have been kind of the foundation of the new approach. We've got Corey Jenkins is coaching our tight ends and fullbacks, and we've got Coach Fred Ferrier here volunteering for us this year. So that side of the ball is almost totally new. And then we've got one of our young ex-players, Jonathan Saxon, is running our defensive side of the ball. He's our defensive coordinator, coaching our linebackers, and the rest of those guys, pretty much the same. We do have Keith Jones. Keith is a journeyman defensive secondary coach who's been all over the place. His last job prior to here was at the United States Naval Academy. He'd been at Virginia Tech for a good many years, and then he coached here back, I guess, in the late to mid-'70s, somewhere in that neck of the woods. So, this staff is one that's come around in a way where, it's gel, and, we're getting a better feel for being able to work with each other. So that's kind of, a reflection of what you see on the field on Saturday.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone. Our first question comes from the line of Melvin Beal with Inside Sports. Please proceed.
Good morning, Coach. How are you?
Hey, Melvin. How are you?
I'm well. Coach, you have had some really, really successful wins against Florida A&M. I believe you're like 14-1 against them since 2002. What do you attribute that success to?
You know what, Melvin? I don't have a clue. I would like to sit here and say, man, I did this and that and all that kind of stuff. Hell, I don't know. We just kind of I think it was just kind of a haphazard statistic that somebody threw at us the other night. I didn't even know it existed. But, we've been fortunate. And, we've gone out there and played well. But besides that, I can tell you that I got no clue on why, it's been that lopsided a series here recently. But I can tell you what, we aren't even yet. you can win for another 30 years with some of the numbers that FAMU put up against the whole rest of the world, back in the olden times. And we've been playing for a long, long time. So, heck, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on that win. It was definitely a different South Carolina State that showed up in Tallahassee. Talk a little bit about the progression of this team over the last 5 weeks. You talked about the maturity level, and you talked about the players getting better, but expand that a little bit for us and talk about the improvement of this team.
Well, I think sometimes the biggest improvement is the cohesiveness, of your team and your staff, and understanding, where you can have your successes, and emphasizing that part of your game as opposed to those things that you don't seem to quite be able to get done. I think our coaches have learned a lot more about the skill sets of the guys that we are trying to coach, and I think what's happened is we've gone to the heavy side of making sure that we've actually done those things that those guys can do. Our quarterback is a run-around kind of guy. Sometimes, I give him a hard time. I stand back behind him, and he throws the football. And I say, who the hell are you throwing the ball to? I say, I can't tell. So we don't make him do a lot of that kind of stuff. When you got to figure out, exactly, whether you throw the ball short or long or sideways or crooked and all that kind of stuff. So we've done things to make sure that we do the things that he can do. And, I think there are a lot of people out there that can emphasize, the negative, and, you don't get very far that way. So I think the main part of the progression is the fact that our coaches, have done a better job of making sure that they do things that our kids can actually execute.
Our next question comes from the line of Ty Miller with Power News and Sports Radio Network. Please proceed.
Hey, Coach Pough, good morning to you. How are you?
Hey, Ty, how are you?
I'm good, Coach. I've talked to you a lot of years, and a lot of other coaches too, and a lot of coaches have said over the years that teams make the biggest improvements between the first 1 and 2 weeks. So can you just tell us a testament to this year why that's not necessarily true?
Well, I thought it was too, Ty, up until this deal this year with us. I mean, we went for, I guess, maybe a month trying to figure out, how to get this team going. And, it never really quite happened. We thought we were playing pretty good coming out of the Morgan game. We come home, and then Bethune beats us, here, and then we go back and play good up at Howard. But let me tell you, I don't know exactly why, a win teams kind of seem to catch their wind, get a little wind in their sails that way. But I can tell you what, I could see it at the Howard game. You could kind of sort of see it for Delaware, but the Howard game was the game where we really got to the point where you could see that the offense was beginning to kind of find its way a little bit, and then from there, then we go into the open date, and that gave us a chance to actually work on some of those things that we could kind of see that we could do, could accomplish coming out of the Howard game, and then from that point on, we're going to try to see if we can, develop that same thing on down the road piece.
And Coach, the last couple of weeks you've had a lot of success running the football. Is that due to personnel or is it by design?
Well, a little bit of both. We've got some guys that can run the football. Our running backs are really good. We've got about 4 of them. And I don't really necessarily care, which one of them's in the game at any time. They can all catch. They can all, run. They're all tough. They can all block. So that's been, a pleasant kind of situation to deal with. Our quarterback, though, has come along in a way where we've done some things to make sure that he's, hit his stride. And, you take that along with the fact that once you get that figured out, your offensive line says, hey, if we do this, these guys might get a little bit, of a good run or something of that nature. So I think it's been kind of a combination of the whole group of things put together there, but at the same time, the big issue is the fact that our guys can run the football because we've given them an opportunity to do so.
Our next question comes from the line of Lute Williams with Black College Sports Page. Please proceed.
Yeah, Ty, excuse me, Ty asked all my questions, Coach, but I can ask a couple. Have you talked about a path, or talked about your team, your staff, about a path to you all gaining a share of the Meac title?
Yeah, we have. At this point, you try to find anything you can, Luke, to give the team a little inspiration to continue to play hard. And, the big deal for us was to try to have a winning record, And, we got a chance to be 6-5 now. But at the same time, if everything falls into place, and, it did a couple of years back when we had like a 5-way tie, then we can have a whole bunch of schools can be tied to the top. I don't really care, how many, as long as we can be one of them. But at the same time, we pretty much know that if any kind of tie happens, then A&T is going to win out, I think, because of the fact that those guys got all the points.
Right. Now, I was reminded yesterday at Coach Washington's press conference that there was a path to which South Carolina State, obviously, if you win your last two games and a series of other things happen, that you actually could tie the championship. But how satisfying would that be? And even if you don't, if you're able to get, I know all you guys talk about one game at a time, but if you're able to get a winning record, how far would you say your program or your team, particularly this year, has come?
Well, I think it will be, back to a point where we could honestly say that we're going in a positive direction again. We've had 2 losing seasons in a row here, and when that happens and you start off the way that we did, and all of a sudden you're sitting there looking at an opportunity to be 6-5, you start really feeling a little bit better about yourself. So, it's a big deal for us right now to try to continue to win these next couple games. And let me tell you, Savannah State ain't and Central. Neither one of those teams will come in here and give us a football game. It'll be tough football games for both those weeks. So we better be ready to play.
There are no further questions at this time.
All right, guys.
Coach Pough, thanks again for talking with us, and we'll talk again next week at the same time.
All right, Ryan, appreciate you.
Thanks. South Carolina State will host Savannah State this weekend in Orangeburg. The contest will be shown live on ESPN3. We're now joined by North Carolina A&T State head coach Sam Washington. He did Savannah State this past weekend, and will head up to Durham this weekend for the 90th annual Aggie Eagle Classic, which will be shown live on ESPN3 and rebroadcast on ESPNU. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you today, Ryan?
I'm good, Coach. Just talk about last weekend's game, as Savannah State once again gave you everything they had, as they pretty much have played you tough for the second consecutive year.
Absolutely. I always have said that's a very fine football team, and they're very well coached, and the kids play hard. And they have a quarterback that's very unique, and he can do multiple things. He threw the ball much better than I anticipated. So that was a surprise to us. We knew he could run the ball extremely well. So it was a challenge for us.
And speaking of your challenges, just talk about the luxury of having Khalil Carter at quarterback. He's not going to put up the stats that everyone's going to go crazy over, but he's a veteran quarterback that's been through several fires. So just talk about, if situation where Raynard is not available, you can throw in someone that has just as much experience in playing on the biggest stage.
Absolutely, and he has been a true joy, to have on this football team. And what I marvel over more than anything is their relationship. He and Lamar are true friends, and I love their camaraderie and the way they communicate and joke and laugh together. One help each other. They help each other, during the ball game, and that's just something you just don't normally see when you've been competing since day one. They came in together, and rarely do you recruit 2 quarterbacks during the same season, same year, and unfortunately we had to. But the relationship has been fantastic throughout. And as far as his play, he has managed the game extremely well for us. And, I'm very proud of him. I thought he had some drops that could have been, just big plays last week. And, I was disappointed with that factor. But for the most part, he has been a true trooper for this football program.
And before we open up the call, this weekend, you already know what's on the line. You've been on both sides of this rivalry, obviously, and you know it's going to be emotional to the point where, you got to tone your guys down and on both sides. So just talk about playing Central, especially. You still have something to play for, and we know Central would love to play spoiler.
Absolutely. I'm sure they would. And it's going to be very important that we come in with cool heads and not allow, our emotions to get involved. And we want to play at a very high level, and we want to play with a lot of intensity, but we've got to remain disciplined and keep level heads throughout the competition. This is, as you said, a rivalry. And Central always going to bring their A game. So we got to be prepared, and we must, bring our A game. And we'll see where the chips fall after the contest.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone. Our first question comes from the line of Michael Wallace with Grind City Media. Please proceed.
Coach, you guys obviously didn't have any margin for error after that FAMU loss, and so it's basically made the last 3 or 4 weeks almost seem like the playoff has already started for the Meac championship. With 4 teams still potentially in play for at least a share of the conference title, does it seem like the intensity has ratcheted up over the last few weeks and has almost made it like sort of an elimination tournament down the stretch?
Well, absolutely, and I think we've been in that mode, since the loss to FAM. We both were one-loss teams, and whomever, finished the season well will get the nod. So, every week is important, and not just to us. With the loss, that include a lot of other folks, which we don't care to happen.
And as a follow-up, does that sort of speak to the balance? I mean, you guys obviously went to the Celebration Bowl last year. The Meac is sitting as many as 2 different teams. The SWAC is still trying to figure out which team will get there as well. With that kind of competition and that kind of parity, does that speak to the level of balance that both of these leagues have at this point?
Absolutely, and I commend the coaching, that's going on in our conference. It's amazing how the parity has leveled out. Every week, not some week, every week you must play. You must play well if you expect to win.
Our next question comes from the line of Ty Miller with Power News Sports Radio Network. Please proceed.
Coach Washington, good morning to you.
How you doing, Ty?
I'm good, Coach. In your post game, you talked about, after the game this past weekend, you talked about the fact that your team has to learn how to finish strong, and North Carolina Central has a propensity to finish strong in the second half. So how key will it be for your team not only to start fast, but to try to sustain the momentum that they get in the first half this week?
It's going to be very crucial. Going in, we know we must play 4 solid quarters to have a chance. And so, we preaching, teaching, and we just can't use that word enough, that we must finish well.
Coach, you've also spoken about the fact that you're 6 seconds away from being undefeated. So that means, I guess you tell your team, you can't even take a playoff, right?
Excuse me? I'm sorry.
You've spoken to the fact that you're 6 seconds from being undefeated, which means that your team can't have any lapses in terms of any playoff that they take off, because you could be in a situation that you can get beat.
Absolutely. And I think that's the reason I mentioned that, so often, because one play could have made the difference. So every play is important. And that's the message, we're trying to, send to these guys, our kids. Every play is important, and you can't take a play off. And if we receive that message, I think we'll be fine.
Our next question comes from the line of Jeff Mills with Greensboro News and Record. Please proceed.
Good morning, Sam. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jeff. How are you?
Doing okay. I just want to check in with you today. Is Lamar Reinhardt back at practice, or is he still out?
Well, he's still out as of today. He's expected back tomorrow. Tomorrow going to be his first day out, and it's going to be day by day. whether or not he's, be able to play or not.
Okay. The other question I had for you was we talked a little bit about these last few games being must-wins for you. Was it hard to keep the guys focused on Savannah State last week with Central as the next game ahead?
Well, I would like to believe not. Of course, it's very difficult. I promise you it is. But if you just watch Savannah State play, I think it would change your opinion, or their opinions, of that football team. They have been in pretty much every ball game, and they compete. So it was a challenge, but I think in the back of our minds, of course, it's hard for them not to look forward. When you talk about Central, it's a true rivalry. It's rivalry at its best.
There are no further questions at this time.
Well, Coach, good luck this weekend as you prepare to face off against Central in the 90th Aggie Eagle Classic, and we'll talk again for the last time this season next week at the same time.
Look forward to it.
Same here. North Carolina A&T State will head to Durham to face off against North Carolina Central this weekend. Kickoff is set for 2 p.m. live on ESPN3 and will be rebroadcast on ESPNU. And speaking of the 90th Aggie-Eagle rivalry, we have the other half of the rivalry in Granville Eastman on the line. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, Ryan. Doing great. Glad to be with you.
Same here, Coach. Let's talk about last week's game at Bethune-Cookman as it came down to the wire once again.
It was a heartbreaker, and really, really extremely proud of our young men. They fought hard. They really left a lot out on the field in their efforts. And congratulations to Bethune as well. Found a way to win that game. No team wanted to lose that football game, obviously. But I'm tremendously proud of our players for the fight and effort that they gave out. And unfortunately, we just did not get it done on the defensive side of the ball when it mattered. So a little disappointed about that. But pleased with their effort, and now we have to move on. We have to move on and focus on the challenge ahead of us.
And speaking of effort, and before we move on, here's Isaiah Totten, almost 200 yards rushing, and it looks like he left everything on the field. So I hope he's not overexhausted. But just talk about his performance and his will on basically trying to carry the team on his back last week.
Well, no, we felt that we had to run the football, and we feel like we have different types of complements of backs that can get the job done. But Isaiah was just really, like you said, he really put the offense on his back, combined with the O-line, some really good blocking. At times he made some really great individual efforts to get an extra yard or two where we needed it. And, he's been coming on like that the last 2-3 games or so, just giving tremendous effort, getting tremendous production. And I think that's a testament to Coach O and the O-line, the running game, and what they've been able to do, the last, 2 weeks or so. I'm very pleased with him. You'll never hear that kid say more than 2 words, but he's a guy that his teammates love to play with, and he really gives you everything he has on every play.
And this weekend, we don't have to really go too far. You have A&T is at home. Yeah. And, you pretty much know it's going to be emotion. So just talk about the emotional side of the game, getting past that so, you can get the team to focus on the actual X's and O's part of the game.
Well, you make a good point. It's a big emotional game. A lot of the individuals who are part of the game kind of know each other, come from, similar schools, same schools and things like that. And that just really makes for even an increased heightened, sense and emotion. And, what we found in years past is that, we have to try and manage their focus on the Tuesday, Wednesday practices. But by the time it hits Thursday, Friday, things are typically at a fever pitch. And I know that the young men at North Carolina A&T feel the same way, especially having another tremendous year. And so as coaches, you're trying to do your best to to focus them up, but you want some of that emotion. You know that's just a part of it. That's what makes it a rivalry. The games have been, the last 3-4 years for the most part, they've been contested on both sides, and so that adds to it as well. So the emotion is going to be a big part of it. It's just a part of this week, and as coaches, we're just going to try and simmer down as best we can, but we want some of that excitement. We want some of that emotion coming out. We really do.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone. We have a question from Jeff Mills with Greensboro News and Record. Please proceed.
Good morning, Coach. Very quickly, A&T has Lamar Raynard and Kyle Carter, two very different quarterbacks. How do you prepare? Who are you preparing for, and how do their different styles make them difficult to prepare for?
Good morning, sir. To you, you're right. They have two different styles, and we're really preparing for both. I think the thing that you cannot lose sight of is that the pieces that are around both quarterbacks are just as lethal as their abilities. You have, Cartwright running the ball. You have the other young man, Martin, that can run the ball. You have Elijah Bell on the outside. You have the other tall receiver on the outside. I mean, they're just weapons everywhere. And you can, at the end of the day, you cannot lose sight of those guys. But the quarterbacks make it go, and the run game makes it go. And both are elusive quarterbacks. I think Raynard can hurt you a little bit more with his arm, but he ran the ball very effectively versus us last year in times where they needed. So we're going to have to do our best. We're going to have to focus on both, prepare to play both, and but not lose sight of the other weapons that are surrounding, because they're the ones, too, that put everything over the top, in my opinion.
A&T takes a lot of most of their focus on defense is stopping the run. You guys have had success running the football against them. Why is that?
Well, we quite frankly, we've lost our success running versus A&T, or just success running in general this year?
Well, in general, but particularly against A&T.
Well, I mean, we want to run the ball as well. We want to run the ball. We want to be sound, want to be balanced, offensive, defensive. But we understand in order to have opportunities to throw the football, that we have to have a good running game. And we've been up and down with that this year. But we really purpose to run the football and run it well. I think our chemistry at O-line it's been worked out over the last 3 weeks or so. We've had to make some adjustments, as everyone else has had to with injuries, and that set us back a little bit, at the O-line. But I think things are going ahead full go right now. I think guys are picking up on, where the holes are and the anticipation of where the blocks are going to be and those sort of things. But again, we do have a commitment to run the football, and so it's a big part of what we do.
Thank you.
There are no further questions at this time.
And, Coach, before we go, just talk about your team from when you took over from day one to where they are now. What has been your biggest strength, and what has stood out that you didn't even expect coming into the year?
Well, I'll tell you what, some young players have really stepped up, and they're growing up. They're maturing right before my eyes. I didn't think that we would grow the way we have been from our youth on defensive side and offensive side. Some guys are going from sophomore to junior, or came from freshman to sophomore, and that's been a really, really good improvement. It won't necessarily show up in some of the wins columns and maybe in some of the stats, but playing week in, week out, fighting through adversity, whether it be nicks or hurt here or there, those sort of things. It's really impressed me, and I see a lot of not only just potentially good football players, but leaders as well, leaders of the football program in our youth, and I'm really pleased with that.
And I'll be remiss if I didn't bring up Devontae Reynolds. Now he's playing at the the level probably Erik would probably wanted to play at the beginning of the year, but being a leader on a young defense, he's now he's almost another look like a linebacker for you at times, especially the way he come off the edge. Let's talk about his play over the past few weeks.
Well, Devontae's really come on, and I'm pleased to see that he's finishing up the season of Flurry with what the anticipation we had come in with, anticipating the kind of year he was going to have. He's been a good leader. He's not a rah-rah guy, mostly by example in his play and his effort on the field. He's been consistent with that in all his time here. And it's been good for some of our young players because there's quite a few of them that are behind him at that position to learn from. And he's able to demonstrate that. So when he moves on, they can kind of see how to play the position. We've tried to, he's best when we can put him in multiple roles at times this year, just because of, again, injuries or who we were playing or lack of seasoning. We've had to do some different things with him, and unfortunately, that has not allowed him to kind of get it, to get to play his game. But the last few weeks, he has been, and he needs to have a couple more good ones for us before this is all over with.
Well, Coach, appreciate it, and good luck this weekend as you prepare to host A&T at home, and we'll talk again this time next week.
Ryan, thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Same here. North Carolina Central will face off against the Aggies of North Carolina A&T State this Saturday in Durham. Kickoff is set for 2 p.m. live on ESPN3 and will be rebroadcast on ESPNU. We will close out our teleconference this morning with Ernest Jones of Morgan State. The Bears defeated Delaware State this past weekend, and we'll head down to Norfolk this weekend in their season finale. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Ryan. How are you today?
I'm good. Recap last week's game versus Dale State as you got your first shutout since 2011, and even head coach Rod Milstead from Dale State said, you did some things with your defense that they didn't expect. And just talk about that game, which led to the shutout.
Yeah, I thought we finally, put it together in all three phases. I mean, I don't think we did much different than what we've been doing all year long. We've been consistent on offense, defense, and then special teams, and it's been fourth quarter games all year in our eyes. And it was just good to get these guys to get a win at home and to play the way they played as a team for 4 quarters. We saw a couple things as we watched film with Dale, and we thought we could take advantage of it from a defensive standpoint, and we went out there and executed the game plan that we put out in front of the players.
And now looking at the game, Dale had some moments to get back into the game, but every time they tried, the defense stood up and prevented those moments from happening. Just talk about, is any particular moments that stood out that kind of really changed the outcome of the game?
No, I don't think so, Ryan. I think we have an aggressive defense. It's been that way all year. It's been that way for the past few years as long as I've been here. We're going to get after quarterbacks. If the quarterbacks can't think quickly and to get the ball out of their hand right now, they're going to have some problems. Our guys understand our defense. They understand our scheme, the holes, the fits. When we make a mistake, it turns into touchdowns. And that's what's been happening throughout the year is those mistakes turn into touchdowns because we're so aggressive. And we didn't make those mistakes versus Dale last week.
And Josh Chase, a big touchdown run, as pretty much every point mattered last week. So you're talking about what he brought to the table to seal the game.
Yeah, it was good to see him run that way. He had a breakout run like that a few weeks ago in a game we had, and he put the ball on the ground on the 1-yard line. So he's been chomping at the bit to get another opportunity to run through the back of the end zone. So that's what I was most proud of. He had the ball secured high and tight, and he ran it through the back of the end zone. But he's a 200-pound tailback. All of our backs weigh 200-plus pounds. That's how we like him. He's a physical guy between the tackles. We're not trying to get outside you and outrun you. We're just trying to run between the tackles, and if you let us loose, we'll try to get to the end zone.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to register a question, please press the 1-4 on your telephone.
Coach, talk about going to Norfolk State this weekend, and the Spartans, pretty much, they're kind of like you all. They they try to establish the run, but they can throw the ball at times also, and they're stingy on defense. So talk about playing a team that pretty much has similar philosophies.
Exactly. I think that they are mirror images of who we are. I mean, our offense and defensive coaches are all saying, let's just practice against each other good on good this week and not go to the game film because we're so much alike. I mean, they have big receivers over there that can jump over your head and catch the football, athletic quarterback that can throw the football, big tailback that can run it, an offensive line that's veteran, that's been with them for a while. I mean, they're going to be pretty good on offense, and it's going to be a challenge for our defense, but we're up for it. And then on defense, I mean, they get after. They show you a different look almost every other play. I mean, you seeing 4 down to 3 down and cover 3 to cover man of quarters. I mean, they got a little bit of everything, the same as we do. So it should be a fun game. Our offense has been seeing those type of looks all year with our defense, and our defense has been seeing those things with our offense. So we think we got 2 teams that are similar in scheme and personnel, and it should be a fun game.
And talk about this team from, especially when the season started, from what you've seen from day one to right now. What's been the biggest change that you can kind of let us know that occurred on the field?
Morgan State's team?
Yes, sir.
Our team? My team? Oh, absolutely. Their identity. I mean, I'm going to keep repeating the message because they have it now. We know who we are. We know what we want to do on offense and defense and in special teams. We're going to run the football right at you. We're going to be physical. We're not trying to fool you. We're not trying to trick you. We're going to be aggressive on defense and try to make the quarterback get the ball out of his hand. This team understands that that's who we are. So there's no guys on our team. They are understanding that that's who we are philosophically, and they have bought into it. And then the second thing would be this team knows that we're going to go compete, and they're going to compete for 4 quarters, and they're going to be in the game with a chance to win it. Everybody in our locker room, player and coach alike, understands that. That's what I see. As we went into this game we just played, everybody knew we was going to be in the game against Dale in the 4th quarter. They were just saying, can we go win it? And now we're to a point to where we know we're going to be in the game versus Norfolk. Can we win the football game in the 4th quarter? That's where we are as a football team, and I'm proud to see that.
And, Coach, you've built several programs as an assistant, and you even laid the foundation as a head coach. So just talk about, when you see guys finally get into the develop, I mean, once they get to what you're trying to preach, then what is the next step in making sure, the program gets to where it needs to be once the identity and the motives are set?
Absolutely, and that's what it's been, Ryan. It's been, we're here to build a program. We weren't trying to be a one-hit wonder or one-year wonder, or we would have done it differently in regards to our approach. So we appreciate the building process. These kids understand that building process. What's next is going to be the consistency as we continue to build. The things that we were focusing on during year 1, we're not going to talk about those things anymore because they are built into the program, and then we're going to move to the next level of how we build it. And then it's going to be about the recruitment. I mean, we got to continue to get the right type of kids in this program that can help us continue to build it. And we feel like we'll do a really good job this off season in regards to recruiting. We got a bunch of kids coming back. We were young, only had 15 seniors, so I got the majority of my team coming back. We feel pretty good about the future here at Morgan State.
And speaking before we close out, your seniors, 15 seniors, just talk about what they've meant to the program, and what would you like them to leave their legacy behind? What you want them to pretty much stand for when people ask them about Morgan State?
I mean, those guys were good. All 15 of those guys play for us week in and week out, and I wish that we could have got more W's for them so that they could have felt the wins that they felt they needed as a senior class. But they came here and truly changed the culture here at Morgan State University. If you come here and walk around our campus, come to a football game on our campus, watch our team play, they're a different football team. How they act off the field, what they're doing on the field, the camaraderie that they have. They've started something here. They've changed the culture. They've built an identity. They've gotten people to believe and buy into what we're doing, and they did that. this 2018 team led by the senior class was what we call the new day, because this is truly a new day here at Morgan State University. It wouldn't be that if those seniors didn't buy into it.
Well, Coach, appreciate it, and good luck to you this weekend and your senior class as they close out their career, and we'll definitely recap everything for the final time next week at this time.
Yes, sir, Ryan. I sure appreciate you having us on.
Thank you, Coach, and have a good week.
Yes, sir.
Morgan State University down to Norfolk, Virginia to face off